Alright, welcome back. Now in this set of videos what we're going to do is we're going to start getting into another feature of Mental Ray called Final Gathering. So what is Final Gathering? Well, Final Gathering is another way of calculating indirect illumination, just like global illumination. Now Final Gathering gets us awesome results and it gets tweaked in its own special way, but it can achieve awesome results just like global illumination can. It's just another way of doing it and another method that you can use in Mental Ray. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up an example scene I got here for you. Go ahead and find 04 scene FG, which is short for Final Gathering, and start. That's the one you want to load up. Okay, so it's a pretty simple scene with a little miniature mock-up of a city over here. And if we do a render region, we're going to get something that looks like this, which of course is no good, but that's okay because we're going to take this scene, we're going to revamp it and get Final Gather going here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to ambience and I'm going to turn my ambience off. And I'm not going to delete my default light. And in a moment you're going to find out why that is. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my light, my default light, which is over here. I'm going to select it and open up its shader PPG. And what I want to do is go ahead and turn the intensity all the way down to 0, essentially turning it off. So why am I opting to turn it off rather than to just delete it altogether? Well, it's going to make a lot of sense in a moment. You're just going to be sitting there going, okay, that makes sense. So if we render now, we should get pitch black darkness, which is good. Now what we're going to do, let's go over here to regions. Let's go to all options. I'm going to collapse this area over here so all we have is the Mental Ray render options. And I'm going to go to the Final Gathering tab and I'm going to hit this checkbox to activate Final Gather. Now that I did that, Final Gathering is active, so let's do a render region. And you notice it takes a little bit longer to render now, but it's still rendering all black. So why is this taking so long to render just black darkness? Well, that's because it's calculating Final Gather, but there isn't enough information in this scene to light up the actual scene. So we need to go ahead and fix that. Let me pin this PPG down because I'm going to be using it quite a bit. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I need to create some sort of source of light. I'm not going to use the default light to do it because Final Gather works a little bit different. Now, this source of light doesn't have to be an actual light itself. That's where Final Gather differs from all other lighting methods in XSI, or in Mental Ray I should say. Now, what's so different about it? Well, the thing that's different about it is that we can use actual physical objects to light up our scene. So what do you mean by that, i3D Jack? Are you crazy? No, not really. The truth is you can use 3D objects like cubes and spheres and cylinders and things to light up your scene. What we're going to do is we're going to use a giant sphere, place it all around our object here. So basically we're going to entrap this little mini city in a giant sphere and light it up using that sphere. So let's go over here to primitive. I'm going to go to polygon mesh. I'm going to grab myself a sphere. Now the sphere's got to be pretty big because it's got to, remember, it's got to encompass the entire scene. So let me increase this to say 500. And now it's really, really big. It's so big it takes up the entire scene. Now to make things easier for me to see in my 3D viewport, I'm going to go to my shading options and I'm going to switch to hidden line removal mode. So now I can actually see everything. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a render region here with Final Gather active. And what we're going to get is pretty dark and we still really can't see much, if anything at all. That's because the way that we light up our scene using the sphere is dependent on the material on the sphere itself. So if we put a special kind of material that can help Final Gather to illuminate this scene, we're going to go ahead and light this up. So what kind of material can we use for that? Well, make sure you have the sphere selected, and let's go up here to material, and then let's go down here to constant. Now a constant material is a flat shader. It has pretty much almost no lighting information. It doesn't work with any specular highlights. It doesn't do reflections or refractions or any of that stuff. It's just a flat color shader, whatever color you decide over here. Okay? So I'm going to pin that PPG down because I am going to be using that one quite a bit. And now I'm going to do a render region. And now you notice something very, very cool happens. Essentially what's going on here is that the sphere has this constant material, which is a pretty bright material, and it's a flat shader. And what this flat shader lets us do, it lets us light up an entire scene using its color. So we can actually go over here and grab this different color and we can change it. We can change its brightness. So if we put it from a light gray to say a pure white, you're going to notice that our scene gets brighter because that constant shader is going to be a lot brighter. This is an awesome way to light up your scenes. It looks very realistic, gives it this nice soft lighting touch that you've probably seen on the internet on other people's renders and things. And you probably always wondered how they get that effect. Well, you can get that effect using Mental Ray and Final Gathering. Another thing that we can do is we can change the color of the constant material and it will affect our little city scene here. So for example, if I change to say a green, you'll notice that now there's a green tint on the objects that we're trying to light up here. So it's very, very awesome what we can do here using this method of lighting up our scene. Now, Final Gathering doesn't exactly need a giant sphere with a constant material in order to light it up. This is just one way that you can light up a scene. In further videos, we're going to explore how to light up your scene using other interesting methods in XSI and Mental Ray. So this is how you can light up a scene using a flat constant shader that is applied to an object that encompasses your entire scene. Alright, so I'm going to cancel out that render region right there. And remember how I said that we needed a light, the default light, in order to create the Final Gather effect? Well, here's the little kind of thing that you have to follow here in XSI. When working with Final Gather in XSI using Mental Ray, of course, what you have to keep in mind is that you have to have at least one light existing in the scene for Final Gather to work. So it doesn't matter what kind of light it is. So you can go up here to primitive light. It could be an infinite light box, neon point, or spotlight. Doesn't matter. As long as you have a minimum of one light in your scene, Final Gather will turn on and work. Because if we go over here to our render options and we have Final Gather checked on, but we go over here to our lights and we have no light, so let me delete this light. What's going to happen is Final Gather will automatically become inactive and you just get these black renders, and the only thing that we can actually see is the white constant material in the background, which again doesn't get any shadow information. That's why it always renders bright color. But the city is just going to be in pitch black darkness, and this is because there's no light in the scene. This is a requirement by XSI. You need to have at least one light in the scene for Final Gather to work. And it doesn't matter if you activate it in the render options, it still won't work until there's at least one light in the scene. Now, let me go ahead and hit undo to bring our light back. It doesn't matter if the light has intensity or not. So as you can see, my intensity can be set to 0 and the Final Gather effect will still work. I can then go in here and change the intensity on this light and increase it or do whatever I want to it, change the color and everything, and I could create a sun basically or whatever I want, and the Final Gather effect will still work. So just remember that that's a requirement. You have to have at least one light in your scene for Final Gather to work. If you're seeing that your Final Gathering is not working and you have it checked on here in your render options, go ahead and see if you have any lights in your scene, because sometimes that can be the problem, especially for beginners into XSI and Mental Ray. Okay, so I'm just going to show you one quick little thing here. I'm going to go to primitive. I'm going to create, say, a cylinder, and the cylinder is going to be right here, in, kind of in the middle of my little miniature city here. And what I'm going to do is, with that cylinder selected, I'm going to go to Material, Assign Material, and I'm going to pick the sphere to tell XSI that I want to place that sphere material on this cylinder. And I'm going to do a render region in this area. And it's a little bit hard to see right there, but you can actually use the cylinder as sort of a light bulb to light up parts of your scene. So let me actually go in here, and with the cylinder selected, I'm going to go to shader. I'm going to go to the constant shader here. I'm going to see where it says RGB over here. I'm going to click on that button a couple of times till I get HSV. Now V stands for value. Now the higher that this color slider is going to go up to is a value of 1. However, we can, just like most parameters in XSI, overdrive that value simply by going to the numerical field and typing in a custom number. So if I go ahead and type in the number 2, you notice everything gets brighter in the scene because now the constant material is being blown out to a value of 2, so it's twice as bright. So what you can do is you can actually use things like these cylinders or spheres or cubes, apply constant material when you're using Final Gather, and then you can go ahead and brighten that up and use it to create actual light bulbs that will actually light up your scene based on the brightness of the material on the object itself. So it's a very neat way of coming in here and lighting up your scenes. So there you have it. That's pretty much how you turn on Final Gathering and activate it in XSI using Mental Ray to pump out these kinds of nice realistic renders with this beautiful indirect lighting. Now I'm going to end the video here. We have a lot more to talk about concerning Final Gathering, and I can't cover it all in just this one video, so I'm just going to end this one here, and in the next video we're going to jump further into Final Gathering with Mental Ray and see how we can manipulate it, change it, and do a whole bunch of neat things with it.